Richard Miller thought kicking his son Ethan out on a mountain road would teach him obedience, but they thought they were punishing him. They thought leaving their own child alone on a dangerous mountain road would teach him a lesson, but instead, their punishment turned into a memory he'll cherish forever. Because when I found that crying boy, I decided to give him something his parents could never take away: a taste of freedom, dignity, and yes, revenge on horseback. Before I dive into this unbelievable story, let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? And hey, if you believe no child should ever be abandoned the way this one was, hit that like button. Subscribe for more true stories of betrayal, justice, and unexpected revenge. Now, let's start from the beginning. The morning started like any other on the farm, quiet, calm, and alive with the kind of smells and sounds that only the countryside can give you. Horses shifting in their stalls, hay dust floating in beams of morning light, the faint metallic creak of gates swinging open. I've been working here for a while now, and it had become my sanctuary. The farm wasn't just a job or a hobby. It was a place where I felt grounded, where the noise of the outside world faded into the rhythm of hooves, the tug of reins, and the steady pulse of the land itself. That day, my boyfriend and I decided to take a trail ride. Trail was a generous word for it. It was really just a narrow mountain road, winding upward with little space on either side. No sidewalks, barely any shoulders, just blacktop, gravel edges, and the occasional pull-off where you could tuck away if a car came barreling by. I knew the risks, but sometimes when you love horses, you take the roads you're given. We'd learn to work around the danger. Every time we heard an engine, we'd pull into a driveway or wider patch until the vehicle passed. Most drivers were cautious enough. They slowed down when they saw us, probably realizing how easily a startled horse could lead to disaster. Still, there were always the few who didn't, the impatient ones, the reckless ones, the ones who thought two people on horseback had no business being on their road. That morning, the incline was biting. My Mari's muscles worked hard beneath me as she pushed against gravity, her breath visible in faint clouds in the cool air. Behind me, my boyfriend followed, his gelding's hooves clicking against the pavement. I remember the silence, the steady rhythm of the ride, the occasional bird call in the trees, and then the low growl of an engine creeping up the hill behind us. I steered into a driveway, patting my horse's neck. My boyfriend edged his horse off onto the rocky side, and that's when the van passed us, sliding by with the side door hanging wide open. I frowned. Weird. Vans didn't usually drive with doors gaping like that. I turned in the saddle to my boyfriend. That was odd. Their door was open, I said. He squinted past me, then his expression shifted. Hey, wait, I think we should go back? I asked. Yeah, he said, lowering his voice. I think someone's walking on the road. I thought I heard someone yell, Lauke. Something in his tone made me sit up straighter. We turned our horses and climbed back over the rise of the hill, the incline pressing against us as we moved. And that's when I saw him, a boy, maybe 10, maybe 13. Hard to tell with kids that age. He was trudging up the mountain road, tears streaking his face, one hand clutching a phone like it was the only anchor he had. He wasn't just walking, he was crying, shoulders hunched, mouth trembling. Alone, my boyfriend called out, his voice careful. Hey, you okay? The boy nodded, but anyone with eyes could see it wasn't true. His chest heaved, his eyes darted nervously, and his lips quivered with every breath. That's when the puzzle pieces fell into place. The open van door, the distance, his age, his tears. Did your parents kick you out of the car? I asked gently. He swallowed hard and whispered, Yeah. The word hit me like a slap dot. What kind of parents abandons their kid on a mountain road? No sidewalks. Blind curves. Cars that sometimes flew faster than they should. This wasn't just cruel, it was dangerous. A punishment that could have ended with flashing sirens, hospital sheets, or worse. I pressed him softly. Do you know where they were going? He sniffled and mumbled the name of one of the activity places farther up the incline. Only about a quarter-mile away, but on foot on that road for a scared kid. It might as well have been miles. My anger simmered hot. Parents on vacation, punishing their child by leaving him to fend for himself in a place he didn't know. He admitted they weren't even from this state. He was a stranger in strange terrain, tossed aside like baggage because he dared to stand up to his father. The injustice burned. I glanced at my boyfriend. We didn't need to speak. We both knew the same thing. We couldn't leave him. I dismounted, my boots crunching against gravel. I held out my helmet. Here, I said, smiling gently. Put this on. His wide, confused eyes blinked up at me. You're not walking up that road. You're going to ride with me, I told him. I'll walk her and you'll be safe on my horse. We'll go back to the farm and then I'll drive you the rest of the way. His tears slowed, disbelief flickering into something fragile hope. He slid onto my Mari's back, awkward and nervous at first, but as we started moving, his posture shifted. His shoulders straightened, his face softened. For the first time, he looked less like a punished child and more like a kid again. Behind us, my boyfriend followed on his horse, keeping a close eye dot as we walked. I coaxed more details from him. He had been afraid of the activity. They were headed to something involving heights. Totally valid for a kid. He'd ask questions, maybe pushed too far, maybe raised his voice. His dad had snapped, yelled, cursed, then, in a fit of rage, shoved open the van door and dumped him on the roadside. Just like that, Dot, he admitted his parents were strict. Too strict. Every question I asked seemed to weigh him down, so I stopped pressing, not wanting to add to the pain. But the truth was clear. He wasn't just dealing with strict parents. He was dealing with cruelty disguised as discipline. And that cruelty lit a fire in me I couldn't ignore. Dot. As we made our slow way down the road toward the farm, the boy sat tall on my mare, one hand clutching the horn of the saddle, the other gripping his phone. Every few steps he'd glance down at the screen like it was a lifeline, waiting for something, anything, to make this moment less surreal. Then, right as the farm came into view, his phone lit up. He jumped slightly, and I could see the caller ID reflected in his wet eyes. His mother. He pressed the phone to his ear, his voice small, fragile. Hello. On the other end, her voice cut sharp. Where are you? I could hear it clearly, even from a few feet away. On the road, he answered, his voice wobbling. This nice lady let me ride her horse. What did you tell her? The mother snapped, her tone clipped like knives. The boy's lip trembled. That I got kicked out of the car. Did you tell her why? She demanded. Did you tell her you were being disrespectful? His yes came out like defeat, like surrender. That's when he turned to me, eyes wide and pleading, and whispered, Can you talk to her? I didn't hesitate. I took the phone. Hi, I said, keeping my voice steady. Your son is safe. I put him on my horse so he didn't have to walk on that road. We're almost back to the farm. From there, I'll drive him to meet you. There was a pause on the line, heavy with something I couldn't quite place. Then, clipped and cold, she replied, I'll come get him. Where are you exactly? On the road, just near the farm entrance, I said. Okay, thanks. And with that, she hung up. No warmth. No gratitude. Just irritation masked as acknowledgement. The boy sagged in the saddle, relief and dread fighting in his small body. I clenched my jaw. 5 minutes later, a car pulled up. Not the van, but a separate vehicle. She stepped out his mother. She was younger than I expected, probably mid-30s, but her face carried exhaustion like a permanent accessory. Her lips pressed into a hard line. Her eyes darted past me to the boy, scanning him for something. Bruises? Shame? Regret? No, she didn't look concerned. She looked annoyed. Thanks, she muttered flatly, gesturing for him to get down. I helped him dismount, steadying his trembling legs as his feet touched gravel. He clutched his phone, his helmet still too big for his head. She grabbed his arm, not hard, but firm, and directed him toward the car. Hold on, I said, stepping closer. My mare shifted behind me, sensing my tension. You're welcome, but it's really not okay to just kick your kid out on the side of the road like that. Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp and defensive. He was being disrespectful, talking back to his father. Cursing at him, I folded my arms. That doesn't make it okay. You're lucky we were the ones who found him and not someone dangerous. For a heartbeat, her expression faltered. Then her chin lifted defiantly. You should tell that to his father. He's the one who had enough. He couldn't take it anymore. The words came out fast, like she'd rehearsed them. Like this wasn't the first time she'd had to defend her husband's cruelty. I let the silence stretch, then said slowly, Sounds to me like you don't have a son problem. You have a husband problem. Her lips parted, stunned for a second. Then she huffed, rolling her eyes. Tell me about it. The boy shrank into himself, sliding into the car as if trying to disappear. And just like that, she slammed the door, muttered another stiff thanks, and drove away. Gravel spit from the tires, dust hanging in the air long after they were gone. I stood there with my mare, reins loose in my hand, staring at the disappearing car. My boyfriend pulled up beside me, his face unreadable. Wow, he said finally. Yeah, I muttered. Wow, but the truth was, I wasn't just shocked. I was furious. That boy had been punished in one of the cruelest ways imaginable. Not by grounding, not by losing privileges, but by being discarded like trash on a dangerous road in a strange state. His crime? Being scared? Asking questions? Standing up to a father who couldn't handle being challenged? I replayed the boy's voice in my head. The way it cracked when he admitted he'd been kicked out. The way he whispered for me to talk to his mom. Like he knew she'd chew him up and spit him out otherwise. And then I thought of his father, the kind of man who'd rather throw his son to the wolves than deal with a little backtalk. The kind of man who used punishment as a weapon, not a lesson. I couldn't shake it. The injustice sat heavy in my chest, Dot, and that's when the seed of revenge took root. I couldn't get the image out of my head. That kid's legs swinging awkwardly in my saddle, his back slowly straightening as he realized he wasn't alone anymore. The way his lips curled into the faintest smile as my mare carried him, steady and sure, away from the place where his own parents had abandoned him. For him, it was probably just a moment of relief. But for me, it became something much bigger. See, that's when I realized the sweetest revenge doesn't always come with fire and fury. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, a moment so tender, so unforgettable, that it stands in direct defiance of the cruelty meant to break you. That boy was supposed to feel punished, humiliated, stripped of dignity. Instead, he'd remember his punishment as the day he got his very first horse ride, and not just any ride one or a stranger. Saw his worth when his own parents didn't. That was the revenge. And it was glorious, Dot, as we reached the farm. He sat taller than when I found him, his small hands gripping the saddle like he belonged there. I walked beside him, watching his tears dry in the wind, his face softening into something that looked almost proud. I thought about what his father expected, a kid trudging up a mountain road, head hung low, punished into silence. Instead, the boy would return with a story, a rebellion wrapped in kindness. I could already imagine him telling it years later. The first time I rode a horse, yeah, it was because my dad kicked me out of the car. And instead of walking, some stranger gave me a pony ride back to safety. Every time he told that story, the punishment would flip on its head. Every listener would hear not about his disrespect, but about his father's cruelty, and that was the point. His father wanted control. He wanted dominance. He wanted obedience. But what he gave his son instead was a core memory one that painted him as the villain and me, a stranger, as the savior. That's the kind of punishment you can't undo. When his phone rang and his mother's voice sliced through the line, I'd seen the fear flicker back in his eyes. But for those minutes on horseback, he was free. Free of shame. Free of punishment. Free of the crushing weight of parental expectations. And I realized something deeper. Revenge wasn't about humiliating his father directly, at least not in this moment. It was about giving the boy exactly what his father tried to take. Joy, dignity, and a story where he came out ahead. It was petty, small, but sharp enough to cut. Later that night, I lay awake replaying it all. The sound of his sobs, the sharpness of his mom's voice, the way she snapped, "Did you tell her why?" As if the reason somehow justified the act. I thought about saying more to her, about calling CPS, about tracking down the father and giving him a piece of my mind. But something in her tone told me she already knew. She wasn't proud. She wasn't even convinced. She was tired. Maybe afraid. Maybe trapped. So instead, I leaned into the one thing I had done right. I gave that boy a memory his father couldn't take away. A punishment turned gift. And oh, how poetic that felt. Because someday, when that boy is older, when he looks back on the strictness and the shouting and the punishments that never fit the crime, he'll also remember this, that not everyone agreed. That not everyone saw him as a problem. That on the day his own father discarded him, a stranger lifted him higher literally onto the back of a horse and showed him he was worth protecting. That's the kind of quiet rebellion that lingers. I kept thinking about the father, though, imagining his return to the activity place, chest puffed with self-righteousness. Maybe he bragged about how he taught his kid a lesson. Maybe he expected his son to show up sweaty, dirty, broken down by the climb. Instead, he got a boy who arrived calm, maybe even a little proud. A boy who said, "Yeah, I rode a horse today." Can you imagine that father's face? The punishment flipped. The lesson ruined. The control undermined. It was perfect. My boyfriend and I didn't talk much about it after. But when we locked up the barn that evening, he said quietly, "You did the right thing." I nodded, brushing hay off my jeans. "I just hope the kid remembers it that way." "Oh, he will," he said. "Trust me," and I believed him. Because once you've been humiliated by someone you love, you don't forget the moment a stranger turned that humiliation into triumph. That sticks. That stings. Especially for the one who tried to break you. The next day, I couldn't stop picturing that boy's face. Not the tears from when we found him, not the fear in his voice when his mom called, but the look he had while riding my moire. For those few minutes, he wasn't just a kid dumped on the side of the road. He was tall, elevated, carried by a creature that wouldn't let him stumble or be left behind. The same way I knew my mare would never throw me, she carried him with the same steadiness, the same dignity. He was safe, and he knew it. That was the revenge. That was the execution. His father had meant to break him, to humiliate him, to remind him who was in control. But all he did was hand me the chance to give his son something unforgettable, a moment where kindness outweighed cruelty and joy replaced punishment. And that memory, that doesn't fade. I kept replaying what might have happened if we hadn't turned back. If my boyfriend hadn't looked behind us and said, "Hey, I think we should go back." If we hadn't found the boy, maybe another car would have come too fast around the bend. Maybe he would have made it up the incline alone, shaking and sobbing, only to arrive at the activity place humiliated and exhausted. His father smug with victory, but instead he arrived differently. Not broken, not battered, not shamed, but carried, elevated. Can you imagine the father's face? Expecting defeat only to see resilience. Expecting obedience only to hear, I rode a horse today. That's the kind of revenge you can't put into words. It's a crack in the armor of control, a reminder that his son's spirit isn't so easily crushed. When I told his mom, "It sounds like you don't have a son problem. You have a husband problem," I meant it. And the way she sighed, the way she muttered, "Tell me about it," that told me everything. She knew. She'd been living it too. Maybe not in the exact same way, but she carried her own weight of fear and exhaustion. Maybe she'd defended him before. Maybe she'd argued. Maybe she'd even gotten punished herself for stepping out of line, and yet she still let it happen. She still sat there while her husband threw their son out of the car. She still called, not to apologize, but to scold. That's the part that cut me the most, because if she truly disagreed, if she truly wanted to protect him, she could have gotten out of that car with her son, walked with him, chosen solidarity over silence, but she didn't dot so instead. It was me, a stranger with a horse, who gave him the solidarity he deserved. I won't lie, part of me wanted to do more. Wanted to call the cops, report the father, tell every adult at that activity place what he'd done. But another part of me knew how that story would be spun. The boy would be labeled disrespectful. Father would claim discipline, and the system, as it so often does, might shrug dot, but the one thing that father can't erase is the story itself. Because every time that boy remembers the day his father threw him out, he'll also remember the day a stranger lifted him higher. And if he ever tells that story, and I hope he does, the villain won't be him. It'll be his father. That's the kind of reputation that spreads quietly, insidiously, like a shadow. You can't brag about teaching your kid a lesson when the whole world knows that lesson ended in a pony ride and a life. Stranger's kindness dot, it makes you look small, petty, cruel, and that's the real punishment. Weeks later, I still thought of him. I thought of his small voice saying, "yeah," when I asked if he'd been kicked out. I thought of how quickly he said, "yes," when I offered to talk to his mom, as if he knew her words would cut deeper than anything his father could throw. I thought of the way he sat taller in the saddle, and I hoped, truly hoped, that it planted something inside him. A seed, a reminder that not all adults treat children like burdens. That there's a world beyond strict rules, yelling, and punishments that cross the line into cruelty. Maybe someday, when he's older, he'll look back and realize it wasn't his fault. He wasn't too much. He wasn't disrespectful. He was a kid. And adults should have known better. And as for me, I didn't need to confront the father. I didn't need to see his face, because the revenge was already done. He wanted obedience. He got defiance. He wanted shame. He got pride dot. He wanted punishment. He gave me the perfect chance to flip it into a gift. That's the kind of revenge that lingers, not just in the memory of the boy, but in the legacy of the father's failure, because years from now, when that boy tells the story of his first horse ride, he won't be talking about punishment. He'll be talking about survival. About kindness, about how, on the worst day, someone turned his pain into something beautiful, and his father, he'll be nothing more than the villain of the story dot, so maybe it wasn't revenge with fireworks or confrontation, but it was revenge in its purest form, robbing a cruel man of his victory, replacing punishment with joy, turning humiliation into pride. I don't know what happened to that boy afterward. I don't know if his mom ever found the courage to stand up to her husband. I don't know if his father ever regretted what he did. But I do know this. On that road, in that moment, I stole the cruelty right out of his father's hands. And I gave his son something he'll carry forever. That's the kind of revenge that lasts. What? Do you think was this the right kind of revenge? If you've ever turned someone's cruelty into something that backfired beautifully, share your story in the comments. Don't forget to like this video if you believe no child should ever be abandoned like that. And subscribe for more stories where justice, quiet or loud, always finds a way.